Well, hello everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Alex Stonos, and there's a quick little blurb and photo about me up there. I'm a senior consultant and instructor here at CTC Train Canada, and I teach a variety of different software courses. And what you're looking at right now is just a quick little agenda of exactly the type of things we're going to be covering today. So we're going through the basics of Microsoft Word 2010 from now until 2:45. And I can see that there's 22 people involved right now. So just to let you know, if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to use the Q&A panel. And you've got checkboxes that will allow you to kind of navigate through there. All you got to do is type in your question and ask all panelists and hit send. And anything that I'm not able to get to right away, a sales representative or someone else here at CTC will be able to get back to you directly in regards to your questions. But for the most part, this is just going to be a sit back and watch and enjoy session. So we're going to be talking about working with new documents as well as document templates, both how to create a document from a template as well as how to create those templates yourself. And that's kind of an interesting topic because I really do want to go into the formal sort of definition of exactly what Microsoft defines as a template. The basics of how to navigate the Word document or the Word interface, and the basics of how to add, select, and delete text. We're also going to talk about the Backstage view. Now, the Backstage view is essentially the File button and all the sub-tabs associated therein. We're going to talk about the ribbon, which is our tab browsing that's inherent to Office 2007, 2010, and 2013. We're going to talk about shortcut key tips, which are keyboarding shortcuts that I'm just going to be kind of mentioning sparingly throughout the presentation. Where there is a proper keyboarding shortcut that's going to be useful, I'll go ahead and I'll mention that to you directly. Now, we'll also be talking about contextual tabs. Now, if you're familiar with Office 2003 and you used to work with additional toolbars, contextual tabs has essentially replaced that whole concept. In other words, they are tabs that appear only when in context with a specific action or feature of the new Office 2010. We're going to talk about the quick style gallery and exactly what styles are and how and why we would apply them, and the type of different users that would go ahead and use formal styles for their document. So if you're unfamiliar with the concept of what a style is, not to worry, I'll be going through that. We'll also be talking about the basics of bullets and numbering. And I'd like to go beyond that and actually talk a little bit about multi-level listing and how that can be used in conjunction with styles. Now, that's all going to come together when we start working on lengthy formal documentation. Now, if you were to actually sign up and take a class here at CTC Train Canada, we would go into detail as to how to quickly, efficiently, and effectively work with large-scale documentation so that you're not working on it for days on end, and you're going to have formal, consistent formatting allocated to that entire document throughout. We'll also be talking about working with borders and shading. These are just a couple of little formatting options. Using the tabs and using the specific aspects of the ruler. This is kind of an interesting topic. It's actually very, very simple, but quite often people get a little bit mystified when it comes to tab stops and whatnot. We'll talk about customizing the quick access toolbar, which is an absolutely essential and critical thing to do when you want to work efficiently in the new Word. And finally, how to show and hide the ribbon. More about how to show the ribbon. I find that most people do like working with it on, but sometimes can accidentally hide the ribbon and not realize how to pull it back again because the instructions on how to do so are not quite as intuitive as we would like to see. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and share our desktop and so you guys can watch and listen as I go through these topics in a little bit more detail over the next 41 minutes. All right, so just give me a moment here. All right, so right now, you should all be looking at my desktop, all right? And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to open up a Word 2010 file. So you'll notice right here on the desktop, I have a file called Plain, and we see the logo from 2010. If I hover on it, we can see that it is a Microsoft Word document. This tells me also that it is a .docx file type. Now, the fact that it is a .docx is implicit. If this was a 97/2003 .doc document, it would have told me that. And I can just go ahead and double-click on it to actually launch the document itself. And then once again, if I look up here towards the top of my screen, you'll notice that the title of the file is actually called plain. And once again, the fact that it's a DOCX, or the new document X, to X being Roman numeral for 10 or 2010 file type, is implicitly understood. If I go to the backstage view by clicking on the File button, you'll notice, in fact, the file path listed right under the information, and there we can see the DOCX. It is indeed a 2010 or new file type. So what I want to do is I want to just quickly go through what exactly it is that we are looking at. And this is the Word 2010 user interface. So to begin with, we have this area at the top that is colloquially known as the ribbon. Okay, the ribbon has replaced the drop-down menus that you would have been familiar with in versions of Word from 1997 through 2003. As you can see, I can select each tab by simply clicking on the name of it. And within each tab, I have groups. So on the Home tab, which is where I always start off, I've got the clipboard group, the font group, the paragraph group, and the styles group, etc., etc. And within each of those groups, I have different buttons or commands. And these commands execute all of the actions that I'll want to go ahead and work on in Microsoft Word. Now, you'll notice that in some groupings, I've got an additional little button in the bottom right-hand corner. And this will expand and create the dialog boxes that we were accustomed to seeing in 2003. So for instance, if I go to the paragraph extension and click on the paragraph, bottom right-hand corner, the paragraph dialog box opens up. And this dialog box should be familiar with what you would have seen in 2003 as well. So we've got buttons, we've got extensions of the dialog boxes, and we have groups and tabs all along the top. Now, predominantly, we're going to be focusing today mostly on the Home tab, which we're going to see our basics, our fundamentals, and if you're new to working with Microsoft Word and to word processing in general, you're going to find that the bulk of your time is going to be spent here on the Home tab. If I want to find out more information about this file itself, I get it from the backstage view, or in other words, the File tab and its sub-tab beneath it. Now, please do note, all of the screens do change as I go through the different subtabs of File. So I wouldn't want you, if you were new to this, to click on File and think that Info was the only screen that you could work with. You, in fact, have multiple screens as I go through it. So if I go to the File tab to begin with, I start off in Information, and it gives me information about plain being the name or the title of this file. Directly beneath it, I can see that I've got the file path. Now, it's quite often in more formalized document environments, law firms who work on contract law, or very often in government offices, there occasionally is a requirement to put the file path in the footer of a document. It's never been easier with the new interface. So we can see that if I can see here the file pathway and I can click on it, I can copy it, and if I can copy it, I can paste it. So you have easy access to the actual file type. Beneath that, we see that we have our permissions. All right, so if I want to put different document detections on it, I could. If I needed to check for issues in relation to the fact that this is a DOCX, I could check that there. Or if I needed to manage the versions that I was working with. Now, over here on the right side of the screen, what I'm looking at is the document properties. And that's where I can see the size of the document, number of pages, editing, as well as any metadata, or in other words, information about information related to the specific file. So I can see when it was last modified, who it was created by, when it was last printed, who the formalized author is. So for instance, if I was working on a shared file, and if the file was open and in use by somebody else, and I wanted to see who opened it last, so I might have to say, hey, I need to work on this file myself, I'd be able to see immediately exactly who was working on that file located on my shared drive. Next, beneath Information, we have the Recent subtab. Now, this is brand new to 2010, and this is a fantastic feature. Because the way the recents work is much different than it was in 2003. In 2003, we would very often focus on the last 3 or 4 recent files in the logistics cycle. Now we can have as many as we like. It goes up to, I think, 155. And if this was, say, a template, something that I use very often, I would go over to the right here, and this little button that looks like a thumbtack or a push pin, as Microsoft calls it, I would click it, and then it suddenly gets promoted above this line, and it will be permanently in my recent documents. So for instance, let's say there was a template on the HR drive that I needed to access once every 6 months to do an evaluation. Well, I don't typically access the HR drive, so I'll very often forget where it's located. Now, the traditional way that many people would suggest remedying this problem is to simply save a copy of it on their hard drive or on their desktop. Unfortunately, not only does this create a redundancy by making a copy, I won't be informed if that document or that template updates. Whereas, if I simply pin the link to that document, anything that's updated to it, as soon as I click this link, will automatically jump into the appropriate file, and I'll already have the correct updates. If I go down to New, this is where I can access not only new blank documents. So if I double click that, I'll get a blank document in the docx file format that I can just go ahead and start typing away on. Or the other option, if I go to New, is to get any of these templates available from office.microsoft.com. Now, I really do want to stress that this is a fantastic place to go if you ever need to be able to get a new template rather than building something from scratch. It is always easier to download sort of like a generalized template and then edit it to your own specific needs than it is to rebuild the wheel from scratch. Basically, put your own corporate information on something here, and then you could go ahead and work with it. So let's say I wanted to work on a new say like fax cover sheet, for instance. I would select it. It would take me to office.microsoft.com, and I could go ahead and download it. And there you go. And I've got a fax template I can go ahead and work with. All I would have to change up, I'll put some corporate information here. All right, and then I would go ahead and fill out the different list aspects of the template, sort of as I saw fit. All right, and I would basically have a large plethora of templates to go ahead and choose from. If I go down to print, I want you to be aware that print and print preview are now the same thing. Our print options over here on the left, our preview over here on the right. Save and send is the next one. Be aware that I now have the option to send something as an attachment. Send it as a link, provided the document is in a shared location. Send it as a PDF or create a PDF, which is a great feature. I no longer have to have Adobe Writer installed in order to create PDFs, but simply Microsoft Word is sufficient. Or send it specifically as an internet fax, assuming that everything is set up for you in that regard. I then have my help screens and my options. Help, I can also just simply hit F1 to go ahead and access the help menu screens. Now, if I look at the ribbon here, I've got all of these different buttons and commands that I can work with. Let me just go back to my plain document here. There we go. There are all these different things that I can work with. But if there's something that I work with very often, I want to be able to access it regardless of which tab I happen to be on. So what I would do is promote that to my quick access toolbar. And this area right up here in the tippy top in the upper left-hand corner, this is known as my quick access toolbar. Now, the last thing I would want to tell you is that there is a correct way or a right way of having a quick access toolbar. There isn't, all right? The best way to have a quick access toolbar set up is whatever buttons and commands you personally use most often, based on your own preferences and tastes in terms of the styles of buttons and commands that you like to use for your job in your role. So let's say I was the type of person that was using bullets all the time. What I would do is I would simply go over to the bullets button, but rather than clicking it to select bullets, I would right-click it. And by right-clicking it, the first button I will always get is Add to Quick Access Toolbar. It gets selected, and now as you can see, I have bullets off of my Quick Access Toolbar. And the alternate way of doing this is I can click the drop-down menu at the end of Quick Access to customize the Quick Access. Here I have popular commands. So maybe I want to have print preview up there. Simply select it, and off I go. Thirdly, I could go to the drop-down and simply say, I want to see more commands. I would select more commands, and we've got different popular commands listed here. Well, if I change popular commands to all commands, I now have every single button, every single command available in Word 2010 at my fingertips that I could simply promote over. So I could say, well, I like to wrap text a lot because I'm often putting in images, maps, screenshots into my documents. I select wrap text and I click add. I say OK, and now I have that up in my quick access toolbar. Now, something that you would learn in an intermediate or advanced class is not just how to create your own quick access toolbar, but how to add things like macros that someone might have developed for quick access toolbar. So if I had a macro available, I could promote that. Maybe my IT team built something that I have to run this macro on in order to get it to do a bunch of tasks. I also want to draw your attention to the import-export button, because Word 2010 has the capability of exporting all customizations to a shared drive that anyone who has access to a drive can access. So let's say you were the one that created that macro, or you were the manager who created a macro for all of his or her staff to go ahead and use. Rather than having IT put that macro individually on every single different machine, I would create it one time, export it to a shared drive, and then have my team simply go to that location on the shared drive and import that customization. And I was able to do all of this in pretty much under 15 seconds without IT intervention whatsoever. And that's the type of intermediate and advanced detail we would go through in some advanced Word classes. We just can't throw that here. So as you can see, promoting things to your quick access means that effectively, if you were doing a role that was very tactical and you were doing sort of the same actions over and over again, you would be able to just simply have your buttons lined up on your quick access and potentially not use a ribbon all that much. Now, if I wanted to access more of my screen, I could always hide my ribbon. So if I go over here to the upper right-hand corner, just to the left of the question mark, which is also helped, you can see the keyboard shortcut listed there in brackets, F1. And if I go to the left of that, you see it kind of looks like an accent circumflex or sort of like an upwards arrow. If I click that, it says minimize the ribbon or Control F1. If I minimize the ribbon, now my ribbon vanishes. I still have my quick access toolbar, and just the names of my different tabs within the ribbon remain. Now, if I click these tabs, the ribbon comes back again. And if I click in my document, it vanishes again. So this is working with a hidden ribbon. Now, I'll be honest with you, I prefer to work this way because I'm the type of user that has lots of buttons up in quick access and accesses the ribbon sort of like on a need-by-need basis, or when my keyboarding shortcuts, I happen to remember what one of the menus that I need to execute. But quite often, especially for, I would say, standard users, we would want to work with our ribbon on. Now, if you accidentally minimize the ribbon and don't remember how to go turn it back again, it's the button just to the left of the top. Notice the little click and arrow going downwards now, and minimize ribbon has now become expand the ribbon. So I can expand it, and now it is permanently, regardless of whether I click in the ribbon or click back into my document, it's back there again, remaining. All right? So once again, minimize the ribbon, maximize the ribbon. Okay? So just by clicking this little arrow here is what allows us to keep it permanently shown or permanently hidden. Okay. So we're looking at this Word document, and you might think that I'm missing something from my screen. In 2003, the ruler and guidelines were always up on the screen. Okay? That came naturally by default the moment the interface was installed on your computer. Now, in 2010, however, it naturally does not come enabled on the screen. So I'll have to go ahead and enable it if I want to work with my tab stops or my rulers. So if I go to View, all right, and I go ahead and put a check mark inside Ruler, you can see that I now have a ruler available along the upper margins. And you can see my margins are defined here in the gray area, over here on the left, and over here on the right. And you can see that we have inherent tab stops, this little triangle right there, and right here, naturally put in to define exactly where the copy is going to go on the document. We also have tab stops right here. If I scroll down, right here as well. And that shows me exactly how much of the margins are being used. Now, if I wanted to expand my margins, I could play around with the tab stops, but it's really much simpler than that. If I go to page layout, I could simply go to the margins drop-down, and define, you know what, I want things to be narrow, all right, and be able to fit a lot more on a single page. Or maybe I want my margins to be wide, okay, because maybe I'm going to be using this as a cover page or a title sheet for a document. Or I simply want to put it back to a 2003 default or use the 2010 version of normal. Now you'll notice that the 2003 default and the 2010 default are slightly different. If you look at the left and the right margins, the 2010 is a little bit narrower margins. Now remember, you can never actually print right touching the edge of a sheet of paper, of course, because that's what's probably called a bleed line. All printers need to be able to grip paper from somewhere or another, so you can't actually print right to the end, but you can make those margins pretty much disappear if you absolutely needed to. All right, so I've adjusted my margins, and now I might want to see exactly what does this ruler do. All right, what's the impact of working with a ruler? I just select some text. I'm just going to select the first two paragraphs here. Okay, I'm just going to go through each one of these three elements of the ruler very quickly to show you exactly what the tab stops do. I'm going to start with what looks like a little triangle from the top. And as you can see, when I hover, it says first line indent. So you can just think about how, like in essay writing or lengthier, like very texty documentation, quite often people like to see the first line being indented, much like you would see in a novel or a magazine. And if I just simply drag that upper tab stop over to an inch, for instance, you can see that where I have a new paragraph beginning, it naturally puts it in indentation. Control Z is undo, that says it's executed there, or I could hit the back key to undo that. Now, if I take it from the lower triangle, which is my hanging indent, different from a first line, this is a hanging indent, and I'll move that over an inch. And that's where we see the opposite thing occur. All right, so if I wanted to put an indentation into things beneath the first paragraph, I could go ahead and pop that in that way. Once again, I could just simply hit my back button to take it off again. Finally, I have the option of the little rectangle at the bottom. All right, and if I hover directly on top of that, we see that this is our left indent. If I take that and just simply move it over to an inch, it moves the entire thing. So, in summary, the left indent moves the first line, or the hanging indent. Sorry, the hanging indent moves the first line indent moves the first line of new paragraphs. The hanging indent moves anything beneath the first line of new paragraphs, and the left indent moves both simultaneously. All right, and that's how we can go ahead and set up our different tab stops in a standard documentation. There we go. Now, one of the other things that we might want to work on when we're working on different documents like this is I might want to work both on documents as well as customized templates that perhaps I want to create that people will use later. And I'll be frank with you all. This is a common misnomer that I see and I encounter very often in companies that I go into. The grand majority of templates that I find that people work with are simply the Word documents that they simply refer to or call templates. Well, I can call my German Shepherd a cat as much as I like. All right, I can feed him cat food. I can try to get him to stay into a little cat box, but that's not going to make him any less of a dog. And similarly, I can call my Word template, my Word document a template and use it like a template, but it's never going to actually formally behave like a template, and I'm going to encounter hiccups. So I want to talk to you all about working with formal templates, how to create them, and how they are different from a standard Word document. Now, if I go back to that plain document that I created, document 1, and I'm just going to simply save this on the desktop. So I'm going to pop in some information here. I'm going to say name, address, and phone number. And I wanted to use this like a template. I'm going to go File and Save As. And I'm going to go ahead and save this on the desktop. And I'm just going to call this Contact Card. Okay? And I'm going to save it there. I hit Save. And now if I go and access my desktop, I'm using Windows 7 here, so I go to the bottom right-hand corner. to show the desktop, you can see that I've got my Word file called Contact Card. Now, there's nothing stopping me from overwriting this. All right, there's nothing stopping me from changing this or for accidentally screwing with the or messing up the actual template of action. Because I can click, I can edit, I can change whatever I want. But if I save it as a template, then all of a sudden this becomes etched in stone. I say File, Save As, and instead of saving it as Contact Card as a Word document, I'm going to change the file type from Word Document over to Word Template. Now you'll notice as soon as it said Word Template, it automatically jumped me to the templates folder. Okay, so we're going to save this on the desktop instead. All right, as a Word template. I'm going to go ahead and say Save. All right, and I'm going to once again show my desktop. Now I've got two different files here. I've got Contact Card, the Word document, and I've got Contact Card, the Word template. You'll notice that the two different icons are different. One looks like a sheet of paper, one looks like a pad of paper. So if I look at the Contact Card template, if I hover above it, you see indeed the type of the template. If I double click to open up Contact Card as a template, you'll notice the title says Document 3. In other words, if I access the template, I get a document. So no matter what I do to this file, it's never going to influence, corrupt, or overwrite this template. Furthermore, if this template is located on a shared network drive, like an S drive or a P drive, for instance, and not on my C drive, so in other words, it's located on a shared drive where multiple people have access to it, it means that multiple people can open up copies of this template simultaneously and edit them. Now, if I was to try to do the exact same behavior with Contact Card, the file, notice that this is the official file itself, then what's going to happen is if this is located on a shared drive, I access it, I'm trying to fill out the template, and one of my colleagues was to, at the same time, try to access it, they would be notified that the file was already in use. All right, and they would have to open up a read-only version of it and go through the whole process there of making a secondary copy. So that whole wait for a person to be finished business or having a read-only copy business, all of that is completely solved if we simply formally call our templates by simply saving them as templates and saving them on shared network drives. All right, so that's the main purpose between like final documents and actual templates. Now we go through the details of building formal Word templates, drop-down menus, drop-down boxes, data validation, all sorts of things that go into formal templates in the intermediate and the advanced Word classes. And quite often, I know when I teach those classes, I'm often having people interested in finding out as much as they can about building these formal templates. In doing so, staff can fill out information much faster than if they were just to simply rebuild documents the same way over and over again. All right, let's talk a little bit about contextual tasks. We haven't even seen that happen yet. Let me go back to my plain file. Go back to my plain file, and I'm going to go right down to the bottom. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and put something external into this file. So I'm going to go over to Insert, and something common that I would put in would be like a block arrow. I tend to build a lot of process diagrams and process sheets when you're working with images. And they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So quite often you want to have a diagram or smart art or something of the like to demonstrate a concept. I take it to go to my shapes under the Insert tab, and I go down to block arrow. I can go ahead and just simply draw a block arrow right on my sheet. Okay. Now, in doing so, I have an image of an arrow. I can make it taller. I can make it shorter. I can grab it from the corner and just simply make it larger. I can grab it from the green circle, which is like a steering wheel. All right, so I can have it point up or point down. And block arrows are interesting because I can also grab them from what we call the vector on these yellow diamonds. So I can change the inner angles as well as the outer angles of it itself. All right, I can adjust the fill to give it a nice gradiency. I can soften its edges. I can bevel it and make it look like something embossed or debossed. And I can give it a three-dimensional rotation to make it look like it's lying flat. All right, so without any trouble, really, I've gone ahead and done some pretty decent graphic design in just a matter of seconds. Now, how does this relate to contextual tabs? Well, you'll notice that when I just simply look at my arrow, I have no way to influence it. All right, what happened to all of my drawing and my fill effects and all of that business? When I click on the arrow, I get the drawing tool appear up here at the top, and it's shaded orange, as you can see. So when I click on it and drawing tools appear, I get the sub-tab of format, and I have all these additional things I can do to it. So I can change, say, the outline color, or I can add text effects to it if I wanted to incorporate some writing, or change an actual texture or fill to it. But if I click off of it, all of this goes away. And that's why it's called a contextual tab, because it's the tab that is in context with the thing. So in other words, as long as I'm clicked on my drawing, I have a drawing tab. If I click on a picture, I have a picture tab. If I click off of it, it vanishes. So in other words, whether I'm working on a table, or I'm working on an image, or if I'm working on a video, or a piece of music, or anything like that, I have to physically be clicked on it. So Microsoft Word knows that that's what I'm interested in working with. What's ironic about all of this is I can tell you as a trainer, we are so often asked what happened to my toolbar, what happened to my additional tabs, what happened to all my buttons. Because when we become really, really engrossed in our own work, we sometimes forget that we have to actually physically click on a thing to access additional features. And sometimes, even I've been able to do this, fall into the trap of just thinking I can just look at the actual image and be able to influence it. But no, I must actually physically click on it, and now I can affect this image both as a drawing or as a picture. All right. Remember, I added the textured background. That's what made Word think that this was in fact a picture. All right. Let's talk a little bit about working with this text as well. I want to talk both working with it in terms of numbering and bullets. So you can see that I have a numbered list going down on the network features here. All right. If I highlight this list right here, I can change this to bullets or to numbering. All right. And I've got, if I go to the drop down underneath each of these, I have different styles that I can affect as we work with. So I can change round bullets, square bullets, or the style pattern and check marks if I so choose. If I choose numbering lists, I have the same options as well. I can choose, do I want numbers with periods or with brackets, do I want letters, do I want Roman numerals. I have all sorts of different options that I can work with. I can also change list levels, which change things into 1, 1A, 1AI, 1AI1, etc., etc., etc. So, in other words, if I wanted to have multiple levels within my list, which is very common in standard operating procedures or any type of engineering or legal documentation that you would have multi-level lists, we would influence it not by bullets or numbering, but rather by a multi-level list itself. Okay? And you can see how each of these different listing and bulleting listing styles will go ahead and affect the document. I want to draw your attention to one very specifically, and that is multi-level list option 6. You can see that it says 1 refers to heading 1, 1.1 heading 2, 1.1.1 heading 3. This is what we call an engineering standard of numbering, and is quite often sought after when writing standard operating procedures or anything that relates to either engineering or to legal standards. We quite often see stuff like this in all sectors, the desire to have this sort of more scientific engineering standard of numbering. So just be aware, don't try to create it with standard numbering, all right? Like, no need to reinvent the wheel. Just simply choose your multi-level list option 6. And we work quite heavily with this in the advanced Word classes when we go ahead and start working with more advanced document features. Now, when I go ahead and go back to the top of my document, I can go ahead and I can use my styles gallery to actually go ahead and stylize this document in order to not only change the formatting look of the documentation, but also to formally define it so that if I have to make changes or if I have to make it consistent with some kind of style guide, I can do so easily. Now you'll notice that this document, if I just zoom out on it a little bit, is completely unformatted. So in other words, we don't have anything bold, anything underlined, anything like that, that kind of defines exactly where is our major headings or minor headings or subheadings or sub-subheadings, et cetera, et cetera. Because there's nothing here, I'll have to put it myself. Now, fortunately, I've worked with this document extensively, and I know exactly what is a major heading, what is a subheading. So if I was the type of person who had to edit or format the documentation of others, so in other words, one party is responsible for the content, and the other party, yourself in that case, is responsible for having a consistent and formalized formatting style applied to it, I would go ahead and use my styles located up here at the top to go ahead and style this document. So if I start at the top, I'm going to go through this in a very specific process. To begin with, I want to work with my Styles Manager, which is a task pane that I can embed on the right side of my document. Now, if I go ahead and click on a specific line of text, you can see that everything already has a style allocated to it, and that style is called normal. Now, what is a style exactly? A style is the architecture upon which Word is based. All right, I'll say that again. Styles are the architecture upon which Word is based. So in other words, it is a set of defined formatting concepts and defined formatting choices. Key word there being defined. Not only is it a way to bundle a bunch of formatting choices together and formalize them, but it does so in a defined way. So it doesn't just say it's going to look a specific way, but rather it will also behave a specific way. It will fall in line a specific way. It can be allocated to a self-generating table of contents, perhaps. Especially if I had to work with large-scale documents, and I had to be able to send them over in a very short amount of time, I would need to be able to see these whenever possible. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start styling this document, and you're going to see just how quickly we can get this working in a very formalized way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by turning on my task pane. If I go over to Styles and go to the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that little dialog box button sitting there. I click on it, and then opens up the Styles task pane. Now, this is going to work similarly to a contextual tab, but it's free-floating. If I drag it all the way so that my cursor hits the far right of the screen, watch as soon as my cursor hits the right of the screen, it automatically embeds. It is now part of my Word interface. Now, the second aspect that I want to look at here is I want to have a navigation pane available. Because maybe this document is 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 pages. All right? I want to be able to quickly jump between major headings. This is also a nice feature to enable if you are reporting to someone who has to scan and mine data out of large-scale documents. So, for instance, if you were, say, a legal assistant or an executive assistant, this would be a good thing to enable on large-scale documents for the people that you report to. I go to the View tab at the top of my ribbon, and I select Navigation Pane, just underneath 2 spots beneath Ruler. You can see I have a second task pane appearing over here on the left. Now, anybody who's worked with Adobe PDF will be familiar with the breakdown of what this navigation pane is going to go ahead and construct. This navigation pane is going to basically make an implicit, not an explicit, but an implicit table of contents that can hyperlink different major headings, once we've applied them, that is. So, I'll go back to the Home tab. Now I'm ready to go ahead and start allocating and defining my styles. So, Introduction to Networking Concepts. This is a major heading, so I'm going to select it by clicking it in the margin. I'm then going to go ahead and click on Heading 1. Heading 1, if I hover above it, gives me a breakdown of exactly what it's going to do. The font is 14 points, it's bold, the character spacing turns to 14 points, There's 12-point space before the text, a 3-point space afterwards. It keeps with the next section breaks, and there's level 1 on an outline. If I click it, all of those different formatting choices are all at once allocated to that line of text. You'll also notice that it becomes bookmarked in my navigation pane. I then would take my format painter, which is the copy and paste of formatting, which will pick up all formatting choices here. Then if I hover on format painter, it says format painter or Control-Shift-C. Copy formatting, not the content, just the formatting from one place and apply it to another. Now, this is what we call a double-sided button. It's one of the only few in all of Office that's double-sided, which means it does one thing if you click it and a second thing if you double-click it. When I double-click the button, it applies the same formatting to multiple places in the document. So I'm going to go ahead and double-click the format painter. All right, and you'll notice when I double-click it, there we go. When I go on the text, I have a little paintbrush icon next to my cursor. I am now ready to apply the rest of my major headings. So I'm going to go through the document, and I'm going to see File Server-Based Networks. Well, that's a heading 1. And I'm going to go to Network Concept, and that's a heading 1. Then Notes, and that's a heading 1. When I'm done, I turn the format painter off. Now I can go ahead and I can define my heading 2. I'll select Centralized Systems. I'll define it as a heading 2, either here or here. Double-click my format painter and define the rest of my heading 2. Distributed Systems, Client Service Systems, Network Topologies, Network Features, and Workstation Characteristics. When I'm done, I turn it off. And once again, I'll go through the same process again, this time for my level 3s. I'll define Star Topology, call it a heading 3, double-click my format painter to copy and paste this style, and apply it to Bus Topology, Token Ring Topology. Now you'll notice not a lot of visual difference happened there, but notice it built it into my my bookmark navigation pane. I'll hit the format painter finally, or simply press Escape, and that takes me out of the format painter mode. Now I've gone ahead and I've applied those different styles using the Quick Style Gallery to my actual documentation. Now it makes a lot more sense because I can see major headings, subheadings, or in some cases sub-subheadings. And look, I can jump to any part of these documents, Network Features, Centralized Systems, Star Topology. By simply using my navigation pane, I can jump to those different portions of the document. All right? All of these styles can, of course, be edited to make sure that you know exactly how this stuff is going to look. So if I want this to look a little differently, I'm simply going to go to my my heading 1. I'm going to highlight it. And let's say I wasn't really a fan of this font. Instead of using Arial, I wanted to use Aharoni. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and select Aharoni. Now that I've gone and selected that, I can simply go to my heading 1 to the drop-down, and I can say Update Heading 1 to Map Selection. So I'll choose a bit more obvious. I'm going to choose, I'll choose my personal favorite font, Century Gothic. I like how symmetrical the arrows are. And I'm going to go, once again, to heading 1, and update heading 1 to Map Selection. My heading 1 is now Century Gothic. If I look at my heading 1 of the Quick Style, the font there looks like Century Gothic. See the nice nowadays. And as I scroll down, notice the rest of my heading 1s have automatically followed suit. So in other words, what I do to one style affects all of those styles that are related to it. So in other words, rather than going through this lengthy document and having to make the same changes over and over and over again, I just have to make it once. And furthermore, because my heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3 are all linked together, if I click in front of the I in Introduction, go to Multi-Level List, and select my engineering multi-level list, by doing one selection, I have automatically appropriately numbered the entire document in one shot. And whether this was a 3-page document or a 300-page document, I accomplished it in the same amount of time. So that's the lesson I really want you to take from all of this. And that's what I hope that any further training you choose to take with CPC in our training centers can really show you that there is no economy of scale when it comes to software. Okay, that if that the time it takes me to do something for 3 pages is the same amount of time that it's going to take me to do for 300 pages. All right, if you're doing the same action, the same button, or the same behavior, the same process over and over and over again. All right, now you're not only being repetitive, you're being redundant. All right, what I can do in a matter of seconds or a matter of minutes could be applied to not only short documents but large-scale documents within that amount of time. All right, well, we've gone through our outline here. I'm going to take a quick peek at our participants to see if it has any specific questions that have been asked. And I am not seeing anything right now. So I'd just like to finish up and say thank you very, very, very much for attending our webinar on Word 2010. And I hope that it was as enjoyable for you to participate in it as it was for me to deliver it. On behalf of everyone here at CPC Training Canada, I really do want to thank you for your time and your attention. And we look forward to hearing from you regarding any other possible training that you'd be interested in taking with us, or in any way in which we can be of service for you and your training needs. Thanks very much. Happy New Year, and have yourself a great day.